Rayna, welcome to Whitstable. You join us here at the Oyster Stores on the day of the release of your album Working's Too Hard. But does that title relate in any way to sort of like your view on life?
In a funny way, yeah, I guess so. I mean, it comes from a song that was a field recording from Kentucky.
Yes.
It's a song called Working's Too Hard, and that song didn't have quite enough of a structure for me, but I really loved that line and some of the lines in that song, so I stole the line and a couple other lines from the song and made my own song out of it. But then after I started piecing the album together, I was like, it's a good title. It says a lot.
For people that might not know too much about you over here at the moment, you were born in Elkhart, northern Indiana, which good old Wikipedia, which is the fount of all knowledge, says is the RV capital of the world in industry.
It is indeed.
But apparently it's got quite a good industry in building musical instruments as well.
It does. Well, it was a very serious manufacturing center in the States, and they had all kinds of factories there. And it just happened to be that there were a lot of band instruments manufactured there, among lots of other things. But I think because of that, the public schools there had a lot of funding for music programs.
Yeah.
So a lot of public schools don't even have music programs at all. But the schools that I went to growing up were there were bands and orchestras and. So that's how I started actually playing violin, was in the school orchestra when I was in 5th grade. So,
and were you classically trained, or was it by ear?
Yeah, so my parents are folk musicians.
Yeah.
So I grew up with that music in the house, but when I actually started playing an instrument, it was classical violin, and I did classical training in the school.
So the initial love of the traditional music came from the family. Did you go on and actually study it, or was it just purely from sort of like performing?
There aren't a lot of ways to formally study traditional music in the States. So, I mean, I certainly made a study of it, but just in my own private, obsessive way.
And didn't you move to Carolina was it North Carolina or South Carolina?
North Carolina. So yeah, I moved to North Carolina when I was 18 to go to college, and just landed smack dab in the middle of the most amazing old-time music community you could possibly imagine. And that's when I started. So I quit classical when I got out of high school and just went completely full-on traditional stuff, and it was just, I was going out to sessions and parties and listening to tapes in my dorm room.
Well, in terms of the albums that you've released under your own name, the first one, Ways of the World, which was about 2000, I think, that was very sort of like trad. Then there was quite a long gap when you were part of Uncle Earl before the second album, Old Light, which was so different from the first album. Was it a case of sort of like, okay, the first album and your time in Uncle Earl concentrated heavily on your actual fiddle playing, but when Old Light came along, that's sort of like when you thought, I think it's time now for me to actually be more in the spotlight as a singer-songwriter, but drawing on those traditional influences as well?
It wasn't as conscious as that. It was a batch of songs that I'd been kicking around. I'd started writing songs, and I was sort of a closet songwriter for a while. And then my oldest brother encouraged me to think about doing an album of songs from our childhood, because we have these conversations about how we have these really vivid memories of hearing murder ballads and stuff like that from when we were tiny kids. And I don't really think of myself as a singer, or I didn't. I'm trying to think of myself more as a singer now. But at the time, I didn't think of myself as a singer at all. But him bringing that up as like, you should do that. Those songs are so great. I think people would love it. We love those songs. And it was a sense of going, oh, yeah, I can feel okay about that, because I have a sense of ownership over that music in a way, because I have such a deep connection with it. So it wasn't about like, oh, I have to be a great singer. It was about, I love these songs and I want to share these songs, and if other people aren't doing it, I'll do it. And so that was kind of where it started, but then at the same time, like sort of on a parallel track, I had started writing these songs as well, and the two things wound up getting mashed together into this, what I considered sort of an art project. So I didn't mean it to be like, here's a statement, I'm now a singer-songwriter. It was really just like, this is a strange art project I worked on for 3 years, and now it's out, and I don't know what happens now. But it did found an audience, and that wound up encouraging me to do more singing and writing.
Well, in terms of that, the new album Working's Too Hard, do you see that as sort of like an extension of Old Light, or is that a completely different project?
It feels like a genuine evolution for me, as far as I felt I wasn't quite confident about or something. In working on Old Light, I feel like I'm a lot more confident about that stuff now, and so it feels like a progression. I mean, for one thing, it was recorded completely live in one room, and that was something I didn't think I could do. Like, that's a major step for me as a singer, certainly. And it wound up just being this very cathartic thing, whereas on Old Light, I did a lot of thinking in a very producer-y way about what instrument do I want to hear on this, and everything was a long process of overdubs and adding things and taking things away, and that was part of what I wanted to do there. But now I really feel like I want to work more on songs, and so having something that's less produced feels like an evolution for me.
Well, we're at the start of 2017 now. Today's the day of the album release in this country. It's also the start of a UK tour. What about the rest of the future? Will there be possible recordings with Uncle Earl, or have you got what you're doing as a trio or by yourself mapped out?
Oh, nothing's mapped out. I'm not that organized. Well, Uncle Earl has been on hiatus for years now. We've had a couple reunions that have been really fun in the last couple of years. And so we're all game to do more shows here and there. None of us can make it a regular thing anymore. We've all got too much going on. But there's no plan in the works for recording, though, with them. As far as my own stuff, I mean, I've been writing more. I've been doing a lot of co-writing with Kieran Kane, who co-produced this record. And I think he and I are probably going to record something that's the two of us, just because we have this pile of songs we've been accumulating. That's about as far as I've gotten. These guys, I wish that I could tour with Kai and Jamie all the time, but they're both super in demand, and scheduling is hard. It's kind of a miracle that this chunk of time lined up.
Well, make the most of them while they're with you.
Yes,
all the best for this tour, and more importantly, all the best for the new album.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks very much.